director, and did he ever start directing as Lionel?
Remember what we said, be kind.
I don't think so, no, but I mean, the thing for me, you know, I agree it did feel like that sort of theatre company feel, and I think, you know, it's you know, you're very intuitive, and as an actor first, you know, I think that you definitely felt, there was a huge sense of trust, you know, I think we just really trusted each other in the scenes, and also, I mean, certain things like, I suppose, you know, with Lionel in his sort of Tourettic tics, you know, we wouldn't rehearse those necessarily, and I would be able to have a sort of authentic reaction, and they would come at different points every time, you know, when the camera was on me, so it felt, you know, a very generous way to work. But yeah, it felt very fluid, and it felt, you know, quite intimate, really, when that. So those are sometimes genuine responses.
Yeah, every time, pretty much. Yeah.
No acting required. Yeah, for me, it made things efficient and immediate, and also, you know, it was, Edward owned, he used the word ownership before, he owned this world, he owned this project so much that he could almost direct me through how he was performing. He'd set the tone, I'd look at his face, and I'd know, you know, I'd be with him.
Really? That's what you're gonna do?
Sort of.
It was totally the opposite. In the diner, I remember at one point in the diner watching and sort of going, "Oh shit, it's my line." I was completely.
I didn't know that.
You know, I think I'd like bark the tick to hide the fact that Tourette's is good when you drop your cues.
You know, something made it really quick, and what I was trying to express is he owned it so much that, you know, you didn't need that delay to check anything. It's like we were taking the lead, and what we did is what stuck, you know, we weren't hedging our bets. Also in how it was shot, too. Dick Pope helped so much, it seems.
Yes.
And he was very fluid, and Edward was fluid. So you just leaped in, and you know, it's what I always like. Yeah, you have some tricks up your sleeve. Yeah, you have an intention, you have an idea, but also you got to let some of that go and be fluid. And this felt pretty fluid, and I think it had to be, given the conditions of how we were shooting, and particularly for my text and the thing I had to do, it helped me because it turned up the heat. And usually, when you see that character on the screen, he's going to get the hook any second. So it makes it very immediate, and like I've got to just unload. I can't pause or reflect.
I do have a fight on the day that we did the big protest in Washington Square Park. So we were like constrained, and we knew that evening by dark we had to go and do that really lovely moment where the brothers are having the argument in the light under the awning in the dark. And so wedged between doing all the protest work and all the coverage and doing the night shot, we had to treat that big walk and talk with Paul really, you know, saying a lot of some of my favorite things. The thing about everybody's walking around like Hindu cows thinking we live in democracy and what can happen, you know, and the urgency of it. And that got squeezed to the point where I came as close as I came on the film to going, I'm not doing this to Willem Defoe. And then, and you know, and I kind of like, and then my producer said, we will never come back to Washington Square Park again. You are not like Steven Spielberg. We're not rebooking Washington Square Park. Willem, we gotta shoot. Willem. But what was amazing was like we were doing all this other work, and Willem was in costume, and he was walking up and down in the. I was kind of stretched out over, and Willem was walking up and down in the pathway, muttering it to himself, and there was hundreds of people in Washington Square Park, and no one noticed Willem at all. It was like New York City, a crazy guy walking around muttering to himself. No one even blinked, no one even noticed. And those who did were probably like, oh, I liked you in the hairy ape. What's the group? Underrated. It was New York does feed you. I think that New York is a very New York is a place where if you embrace not the chaos, but if you embrace the interplay of the energy of the city when you're outside and don't fight it, and when you go inside, the spaces are often like that pool or the library. The spaces are so powerful that they convey a lot to you. There's a lot to take out of New York and feed into the energy of the work.
I mean, and it's sometimes it's become a little cliche to say, but New York really is a character in this movie. Yeah, and it's such a lovely.
Washington Square Park personally have lots of associations, but we also have historic associations, certain events that were there. So you're rubbing shoulders with history, and that helps with the pretending. That really helps you to get there. It elevates things.
Part of the heart of this movie that I love so much is the relationship between you two, and it almost feels like a different movie when you step into this insulated world that your character embodies. And she's someone who's very ahead of her time in this film. How did you sort of know that chemistry would work? Chemistry is such an indefinable thing. I don't know if you had a chemistry read, if there was any kind of casting session, or it was just faith.
We met the team.
I'm British, but
I don't know.
No, I don't. Milos Forman. The third film I worked on was Larry Flint, and Milos Forman had been an idol of mine and Manny as a director, as a filmmaker, and I was really. He was as much of a mentor to me as anybody in my early years, and he said something fascinating to me. He said he thought that directing really was casting and editing, and that everything in between was getting as many days as you can to shoot as much as you can. And he wasn't a super precious director he wasn't a camera guy. He would crisscross cameras. He was much more concerned with like capturing the unrepeatable moment. He would say that all the time, and he would drive DPs nuts because he would crisscross cameras so that if interesting things happened between actors improvisationally, he wouldn't miss it. You know what I mean? And he said something about casting. He told me that he never cast anybody in anything. It came from, this is actor inside baseball, but this is the right crowd for it. I said to him one time, I was like, Paul Schofield played Salieri on the West End, and Ian McKellen did it in New York, and they won the Olivier and the Tony. I said, what made you cast Murray Abraham after that? And he was like, he goes, what? Well, he said, Paul Schofield is Paul Schofield, Ian McKellen. He goes, if I cast him, then it is Ian McKellen as Salieri. And he was like, Murray believes he should be Ian, and that is Salieri. He said, I like someone to, if they open their mouth, they are the role. They cannot be wrong. I thought about that a lot, and I felt with Laura in particular. And with Paul, obviously, I was like, who's both convincingly, scarily crazy, and also very moral? And I was like, Willem, he can't be wrong. I felt with Laura that I really wanted the audience to have the same experience that Lionel's having, which is in a sense of allure or desire to know more. And I felt that I was very aware of Gugu's work, but I also felt enough people weren't yet, that there would be a sense of excitement, a sense of discovery, a sense of a desire to keep going deeper, to go, oh, she's in the blue coat, wow, she's very striking, and that's pulling us along. But then she starts to speak, and wow, wait, this is not a secretary, this is a lawyer, and then she's taking him into this exotic world of music, and then there's mystery, and finally there's a lot of depth of emotion and real something. And I felt, I knew from Gugu's work, and I knew from talking to her, that we would have great connection because Laura has an intelligence. Fundamentally, she has an intelligence and an emotional empathy which I think you can't fake. You can feel if you talk to someone, and I had seen it in her work. And to me, it was like that liminal moment in someone's career where you can actually have an audience not know what's coming. And that's so perfect for Laura. So I think casting is important because you want to create a proxy experience. Bruce was that way too. I said to him, I was like, I'm not gonna lie, you're dead on page 28. You know? And he was like, it's all right, buddy. I don't, he's like, I want to, and I said, but it shouldn't be just like some character actor, because you see these guys sitting in the car, what's going on here? And then Bruce comes around the corner and you go, there's the boss. There's the boss. Like, and the very fact that Bruce likes this guy, the coolest guy in the rooms, this is my guy, this hump over here, I don't really, but you, I like, and you can feel the bond. Bruce carries that. It's all in him. It's all, he comes with that baggage, and he fuels, immediately why Lionel, why this is, where he's got a safe space.
Which drives the rest of the
Yeah.
movie, honestly. And Gugu, I actually don't know if I've told you this because I really am her biggest fan. I didn't know for like the first hour of the movie that was you. Like, it's a whole transformation just with the costume, the way you walk, everything.
Oh, thank you. Well, Amy Roth, our costume designer, did an incredible job. And the aesthetic, I guess, of 1957, the silhouette is different. We played around a lot with my hair. But I think we ended up not, choices that we made to kind of, make her feel more of that period. And as I say, the coat was a big choice. I think that blue coat, and I think I was wearing a blue coat the first time that we met. Actually, I just suddenly remembered that the other day, thinking about my first meeting. I don't know if that planted it in your brain, but it's and also the costumes. I mean, as an actor, 1957 for a woman, the period undergarments, the girdles, which are sort of the 50s version of Spanx, and they do change how you walk, and you find yourself walking in a more dainty, shorter strides, and but it sort of tells you a lot really about women's place in society at that time as well. You can just feel it physically.
I'm going to take a couple quick questions from the audience if we have any. I'm sure we have plenty. Raise your hand. Start right there.
So my question is, starting with Edward, but everybody can kind of reach into it too. Being such an obviously intelligent, cerebral, and obviously mastermind in this project, but also dealing with a character that has a lot of mental issues, how do you stop yourself from trying to micromanage your performance and trying to pick out every single beat and every single moment for the take? How do you stay fluid with that as well?
Stay fluid and not micromanaging your performance.
Making yourself the director and the editor helps. I don't say that jokingly, really, because I suffer from a measure of Lionel's kind of compulsion to repeat things until they sound right or click. I'm very happy on take 30, I can go happily down the hole of a Meisner exercise for a long, long time, and I think that knowing that with Lionel's kind of jazz, there's no one right thing. To me, the question was more calibration, which is like, what's the right level for the moment in the scene? Is this a scene of comfort with people who know him, and so it can be self-knowing and warm and affectionate, even Bobby tapping him and laughing at himself? Or is this like pain and anguish at the level of I gotta smoke opium to check myself out? Which part of the thing are we dealing with? But honestly, knowing that we had to move, and that I could sculpt later, let me in some ways be more clinical and just be like, well, don't be a dumbass. Make sure I've got 1 at 2, 1 at 6, and 1 at 11. Let's redline it. That might be too far. Let's bracket the performance so that and let me sort it out later. Which was for me, it was a very good thing. It was a good thing not to get out of the headspace of perfecting the thing and feeling like there's one in the can that you don't have to cut, or and that's it. That wasn't practical for me on this. I needed to throw a lot against the wall, make sure I gave myself a spectrum of levels, and I rehearsed. The guy who plays the mayor, Peter Lewis, is we used to do plays at the 29th Street Rep in New York in the mid-90s, and he's a great actor and he teaches acting. And I just did all my rehearsing with him. I've known him forever, so we rehearsed all my stuff together.
Before you even got to set.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he was my rehearsing part, so that I could work through the bad version of all of it. And, 'cause there just wasn't time to rehearse on set on this film. There really wasn't.
Did you guys have to come to set sort of prepared into your characters already as well?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, as you said, there wasn't time for rehearsal. My first sort of big dialogue moment where we're walking along past the brownstones in Fort Greene, it was freezing cold, and the snow was kind of falling between takes, and just being able to kind of, spit out that dialogue was really, the challenge, and there wasn't really much time for practice.
And Willem, you're making so many great movies a year. I wonder if you ever get confused and show up as your Lighthouse character.
If I have a problem, that's not my problem. It's funny because when Edward said, would you like to do this? And I said, yes, I'd like to, but I'm growing this beard for the Lighthouse because this was shot before the Lighthouse. And I said, I'll stick out, if in the 1950s nobody had a beard, it's like, will it work, and also you feel kind of disloyal because you're growing something for something else. You're kind of preparing on someone else's set.
Yeah, the continuity ladies are going, we gotta trim this, Willem. And you're like, tuck it in.
But actually, in the end, Edward said, we'll deal with it, it's okay. And I trusted him, and I said, okay, I want to do this, I'm happy to do it, I just want to not be able to contribute in the way you needed me to. And the truth is, I think it actually works, because with that long coat, even though there weren't probably many people with beards in those days, the second you see him, the nice thing about the character is, and a lot of characters in this story, they aren't who they appear to be when you first see them. And when you first see him at that town meeting, I mean, a guy with kind of a nice but tatty overcoat, fedora, and this beard, I mean, you write him off pretty quick. You think he's a crank. And if I didn't have that beard, maybe I wouldn't be that handsome.
It also stresses his otherness, so to speak.
Yeah, so that otherness worked, actually.
Sure, right down here in front.
Hi, first of all, I want to say the movie every second was captivating, amazing. It's amazing. I just want to, technically, how were you able to operate, because you said you were relying on the actors as a director. So who was calling cuts and, all that? Was there some backup?
Who was calling that?
Well, I guess what I meant by that is the actors were my mechanism for getting back out of my kind of left brain and into that more available kind of performance mode. But I had, equally, I had just a Justice League of great talents around me. Dick Pope really is one of the great living cinematographers. He shot The Illusionist, and I already sort of revered him because he shot all of Mike Leigh's films, and these period films he had done for Mike Leigh, Vera Drake, and Topsy Turvy, and then later Mr. Turner. I knew they were done on a tight schedule, and I really couldn't actually compute how he was doing what he was doing and then when I did The Illusionist, that movie was done on a tight schedule, and when I was like, you know, this how's he gonna really make this not look like television, you know, on this schedule? And that, honestly, the movie barely works. It works because Dick Pope's photography is so goddamn good. It works like hypnosis on you, and you think it's like an okay film. Like it's like I'm serious.
It's more than okay.
No, but he's amazing, and he was amazing. My partner Bill is a great producer, but was a terrific actor when we met, and I had him to look to, and I had people around me that Dick and I had done our work. This was not a show up and where are we going to set the camera. We had shot lists with photos. That it was the most shot listed. Every day was like the Dirty Dozen. Donald Duck goes here. The camera. Nobody showed up and didn't know what was the next shot, what was the next thing. And so since we'd already done that work, I felt very free to delegate. I never have to worry with Dick. Is what's happening in the frame what we decided on. He's one of the masters. So it was what we were saying. Like when we were sitting doing the diner scene, I wasn't getting up from the counter to go look at the shot ever. Like we were just sitting there, and we weren't even really watching tapes. It was like there was things we needed to look at the monitor. You know what I mean? If the car is racing into the hospital and you're on a crane and you're coming down and you're doing that, then you're in that mode. But if we were acting, I wasn't particularly worried about the execution of the shot because Dick was like all over it.
Before we go, I don't think I mentioned that this movie took almost 20 years to get made from the time the novel came out. But in that time, obviously, it sort of became more timely than ever. We have these issues of discrimination and political corruption. To some degree, how did that work itself into the final product? And everything sort of happens in its time for a reason. Like, why is this the perfect time for this to be coming out?
Well, sadly, I think that's all too evident. I think that it certainly wasn't. I finished writing it in like 2012, and Obama was getting inaugurated for a second term, and I was like, wow, a lot of what this movie's about is fading in the rearview mirror. We are entering a post-racial utopia. I honestly, Alex's character and the things that happened were not to me, issues that fade in American life. I think, and in fact, those have always been subjects of good noir. Good noir, not dime store detective cliche, but good noir is a very healthy impulse, I think, to say, we've got a narrative of American life. It's idealistic. We all buy into it to some degree. We're proud of it to some degree. We trust it to some degree. But noir sort of says, hang on, we're going to peel the corner back and remind ourselves that there's a shadow narrative. There's these things that are always going on where there are people amassing power that we didn't give them and doing things to us that are good for them and bad for us. And we need to watch out that we let that go on at our peril. And sometimes they're very cynical. Sometimes those films have a very cynical conclusion. Chinatown, obviously, sort of says, right at the moment that Vietnam is unwinding and Watergate's blowing up, and people in this country are going, what the hell is going on? What happened to us? And we get, he makes this film that says, hey, California, the land of dreams and the American second chance. This was a place built on theft, and the people who did it raped their daughters too. You know what I mean? And if you contend with them, Faye Dunaway's getting a bullet through the eye, and you are going to be right back where you started, unable to affect anything. And it's pretty dark, to say the least. I think that, honestly, it's bringing it back around to actors. I really did feel that it's not just because these two are sitting here. For me, the movie's about whether you're people whether we're going to confer a heroic value on power, or whether we're going to say that as we did in the 30s, American heroism is taking care of each other. And Paul and Lionel is not actually a hero. Lionel is fairly passive. He's indulging the idea that his affliction is struggle enough. And he encounters these people who, to me, like Paul and Lara, are much more like the moral, they have the moral heroism in the film, and they ultimately motivate him to act. You know, he has to grow up. And I think I did really actually want to work with people that, to me, like, I was joking earlier, but I think one of the things when we talked about it, I think one of the things that hooked for me and Willem was that there's a social justice component of the film, that people like Paul save the world. You know, people like Laura save the world, and they in essence say to the rest of us, like, you know, you gotta step it up. And I think I did want people, you know, who I think we wanted to convey a different, you know, I think noir has a capacity to not necessarily always go dark. You can remind people that we have to watch out for each other. That's why Jonathan's title, Motherless Brooklyn, is a beautiful title, because it conveys what happens when there's a lack of care. People get destroyed, communities get destroyed, you lose Penn Station, there's cost, you know, and I liked the idea of, I felt like with these collaborators, like there was an understanding that in many ways it's about like, what are we gonna, what kind of heroism are we gonna celebrate?
I want to remind everyone, this movie opens this week in theaters, so go pay to see it.